Do you have something to share?
No, go ahead.
Jackie, do you want to talk more about what you've done with Russell specifically? Because this is so different than what you would typically see on him.
Yeah, I think when people hear Russell Westbrook's name, they think NBA player, they think, NBA MVP and future Hall of Famer. But really, he has spent a large portion of his career authentically building a brand around the fashion industry. And so when standing up a newsletter, I think from him, it was a way to speak directly to his audience and to his fans around something that he has inside information on and is passionate. And so, even though there's touches of basketball, it was a way that he, who is someone that oftentimes does not speak out to the media and does not speak to the public, he can have touch points with his audience in a way that otherwise he wouldn't have had. And so in this case, monetization is not our number one goal. Our content strategy is the most important thing. And then hopefully, effective monetization can still come off the back of it, but it is not the number one priority. And we understand that and went into it knowing that. And I think it can kind of be seen in the way that the newsletter's written.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that example, like if Russell was to take his Instagram and just do all fashion, for instance, to how many followers does he have on Instagram? Like 20 million, right? He would instantly lose sight of all of his basketball fans and everybody. So keeping it very high level on social media to get in front of like all 26 million, but then really use a newsletter to drive into that specific niche category, I think is going to be very successful for him.
Yeah, and I have a slightly different take. So I started doing my newsletter when I was running VidCon during COVID. And the whole goal of it was to, we had all these people, we had their email addresses. We wanted them to start coming to our virtual events because we couldn't do real events anymore because it was COVID. And so I was like, well, rather than just sending an email saying, you got to come to this, I was like, well, let me put a couple of news stories in there. I ran magazines before, so I had some experience doing that. And I was like, let's just do that and see what happens. About a week or two later, after the first one went out, LinkedIn started their newsletter thing. And I'm like, well, I'm going to shove it on my LinkedIn too. And it started out as a way to sort of promote VidCon virtual. And then we went back to real VidCon in real life and did the same thing. When I left, I kept my LinkedIn portion of it. And it shifted. It shifted from I want to promote VidCon to I want to make sure people remember me when I'm out there without a job as somebody who had a voice in the creator space, in the creator economy space. So for me, it was brand building. And I've got sponsors, which I love. I love my sponsor, Whaler. They're amazing. But the real goal for me was building brand and my own personal brand. And I continue to do that. It also, though, there's an unintended consequence of my newsletter, which is basically me looking at the big stories in the creator economy every week and saying, oh, this is interesting. Oh, I have a hot take on this one. Oh, I think this is really interesting. I write for myself, but it also keeps me up to date on everything that's going on. So you got to do your newsletter on a schedule. I do mine weekly. I do it every Monday in the morning. You're gonna get it. But now I know everything that's going on in the space, which is also really nice for that brand of an expert in the space that I wanted to keep building up. And it's like unintended consequence. I now know what's going on.
How do you stay on top of sorry to ask you,
No, go ahead.
how do you stay on top of all that news? Obviously LinkedIn.
Yeah, to stay on top of it, it's definitely LinkedIn. I have a bunch of feeds. I'm like old school RSS feed, love that. So I use Feed Reader, Feedly, it's Feedly, where I've got all these feeds in, and I look at that. I also I'm constantly. This was on an earlier session. I forget who said it, but constantly creating ideas about your content. I think it was like Corporate Bro or somebody else. They're like, I'm always doing that. I've got my folder. What I do is I have WhatsApp. You can WhatsApp yourself. Did you know you can WhatsApp yourself? So yeah, talk to yourself. Basically, that's what I do all day. But every time I see an interesting story, and I have the shell of my newsletter open on my computer all the time, so I can put stuff in. But out here, I was like, there are two stories. I just WhatsApp myself. So I basically WhatsApp myself, and then I sit down Thursday or Friday and write it.
Share one more example too. You talked about Ross, but corporate Natalie, who spoke earlier, she has a newsletter on Beehive, and I worked with her in her content strategy. Another example of how creators use this to kind of have more of a personal connection with their fans. Hers is titled Out of Office. So she's using it to talk about what she's doing outside of what you're seeing on social media. So she'll give a behind the scenes look at what she and her boyfriend do that she doesn't ever talk about him on Instagram or TikTok. She'll talk about what she's wearing and use that to promote some of her collaborations or different outfits. And she obviously, as you guys all know, is hilarious. And so that is always entertaining to listen to or to read because she is also funny in her newsletter. So keeping that brand voice and your personal brand like you're talking about, but she keeps that consistent through her newsletter too, which is amazing. And just using it to kind of have that deeper connection with her fans has been very valuable for her.
Well, all three of you mentioned being able to relate personally with your audience. Do you think for creators just starting out, how personal do you think you need to be in order to keep your audience engaged and to be just effective in relating with them? If or is there a way where they can relate to their audience without really sharing all the personal details of their life?
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of parse out the difference of personal and authentic. To me, it's more about being really authentic to yourself because I think even in a newsletter as well as on social media, if you are trying to kind of be performative and be someone you're not, eventually that's going to come through to the audience. So I don't think it's necessary, at least from where I sit, I don't think it's about as sharing as much personal information as more letting people see the parts of you that you're willing to share and doing that authentically and not trying to cover it up or change it or be what you think they want to hear, because at the end of the day, if the premise of the newsletter is you, even at the top, then it really needs to be that, and allow that to shine.
Yeah, I think that's valid. And then I also think that another way, also, if you don't feel like being personal, because being personal is vulnerable and all the things, uh, kind of what you're doing is picking your niche and like finding something that people want to hear from you. So if it's about astrology and you love astrology, like leaning into that direction and that's something you're talking about without making that personal. And you can find a theme or a niche that your fans and followers like and just kind of go deeper on the newsletter and just have that extra added value.
Yeah, so when I first started doing television in like '98, we did this cable network called TechTV, and I was a geek. I'd never been on TV before, and they were like, "Oh, it's a camera, and there's a teleprompter, and there's like 20 other people waiting for you to do a really good job. But just think of the camera as your friend. Talk to it like it's your friend," which was very hard for me. But I think that's a lesson to learn when you're doing an email newsletter is it's an email from a friend. You're writing a note to a friend. You're writing something out and just saying, it's like, think of the person that you're writing to. And if it's one or two or five friends of yours when you're writing your newsletter and just do all the stuff they talked about, but just think about writing to a friend and doing a little email to your friend and make sure that that comes across. Sometimes I'm writing and I'm like, oh man, this sucks. And I write about it and they're like, wait, I'm writing this to my friend. I need to make this a little bit more personal about why I think it really sucks or it's really good or whatever.
Shifting into strategy, I'd like to hear from all three of you on how what strategies you use to grow your own audiences. And then from Catherine, I'd like to hear specifically, with your vantage point at Beehive, what differentiates the top creators, the ones with the most engagement, subscribers, any advice that you can share?
Let's take it. So I got the mic. So for me, LinkedIn has been great because they have some really good schemes for getting you to grow your audience. Like someone follows you, they're like, "Do you want to subscribe to the newsletter?" The answer is always yes. But other ways that I've been building my audience, I do meetups, and I'll do meetups with friends at VidCon or at Web Summit or other places. And because I use Luma, and when people come to there, they put in their email address, and I always say, make sure you're okay to. So I'll shove those in. That's been a really fun way for me to grow my Beehive because we had 400 people come to this thing we did at VidCon last year, and I sat on those email addresses for like 3, 4, 5 months, and I launched it on Beehive. I was like, I wonder if I could put it in there, and all of a sudden I had 400 people following me there. So that's one. I do think that there are ways to do collabs and other things which I want to get into. I'm going to say Beehive. I know there are ways to do it, and we were just talking about this, but there's some mechanisms on some other platforms that have some really interesting ways when you subscribe and they recommend other people to subscribe to. So lean into whatever those things that are out there are. And every time I do a LinkedIn post, I don't put something in it that says subscribe to my newsletter, but I should. And there's also a way in LinkedIn to, when you do a post, you can have a little thing that comes up there that says, what do you want people to do? Do they go to my website, do this? Mine always says subscribe to my newsletter. So anytime someone gives you an opportunity to get people to subscribe, put it in there and subscribe. Someone's calling me there, a subscriber.
If they're a subscriber, you should be answering it. That's one value. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Great. Mayo's Tax Service LLC.
Oh,
I don't think.
no, you don't want to answer that.
No idea who they are.
Well, I think Jim had some good points on that.
Sorry. I
Going
digress.
back.
Go ahead.
What was it? We're going back to growth strategies, right? And I would say he had some good points there. You got to be ruthless. I mean, when you're a content creator and like you got to self promote yourself and you got to put it out there. So the best people on Beehive that have like the craziest growth are really just on their Instagram stories, linking that in the stories, getting people to subscribe, having them like understand why there's value of doing it and showing glimpses of what the newsletter said that week to give like a sneak peek, giving them a reason. I know Jackie might talk about this, but like there's a lot of incentives that could go out there and saying if you subscribe, you also could win something, or you could be part of this special Jim will answer your phone if you subscribe, you know, different things that can happen. So giving them incentives, and then I can keep talking about all these things, but I think you kind of touched on the recommendation piece. Yes, like every newsletter provider that's doing well right now has a recommendation engine, and leaning into that. A lot of people are scared of that, consumers and creators alike, because they don't want their readers to feel like they're getting flooded with other emails just because they subscribe to one newsletter. Beehive is very authentic and very specific about recommendations. So when you're recommending another newsletter, it's not an auto opt-in, and that's something that a lot of our creators choose us for because of the auto opt-in that tends to otherwise add too many emails to the breeders' newsletters. So thinking about, but leaning into that as like a growth strategy in a really authentic way. So making sure if Jackie and I had a newsletter that was in the same space, like we would recommend each other because our followers want to learn more about what Jackie's talking about and what I'm talking about. So finding those like very specific niches where you can recommend each other, and lean into that has been really helpful.
You can start with having a creator that's got 20 plus million followers. That's always helpful.
Gosh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah. No, but I think to me, I believe that one of the most important things in terms of growing a newsletter is your consistency, both in the way that you're willing to promote it, as well as providing your consumer an experience that's consistent. And we saw that at Just Women's Sports. I saw that at Bleacher Report. If someone is counting on the content to hit their inbox and you don't deliver, or you deliver content that they're not necessarily looking for, that's a pretty quick way to lose subscribers. And so really making sure that you have a strategy in place and a clear path to what that content is going to be, when they're going to get it, and then how you're going to promote it is at the end of the day the like formula you really need to follow to build up that subscriber base. And then, as Catherine said, another tool that we use with Russell's newsletter in particular, right now we're doing a referral giveaway. So encouraging our current subscribers to refer other people that they think would be interested in the content. And then if you have a certain number of referrals, you're entered to be a part of the giveaway. We're giving away some clothes from his clothing line, which again, we believe is something that probably speaks to the audience specifically. You know, if they're following him, they're probably interested in what he's doing with his clothing line as well. And so finding opportunities for the user base that you have built that would be valuable to them, so they can pay it forward to people in their network, and then in turn help you grow your newsletter.
How often do you think you need to post? Is it daily, weekly, monthly, in order, especially when you're first starting out, to keep your audience engaged?
Yeah, I actually think, and I'll be curious to hear what you two have to say, I think that you should be more conservative when you're first starting out your newsletter. The reality is, getting to a daily or even a weekly newsletter is it's a big lift, and I think you need to be realistic about that. And if you start creating noise in someone's inbox, then you're no longer valuable to them either. And so there really is an important balance, and I personally believe that you should calibrate to the sending less side than the more when you're first starting out. And then if you see that every time you send, you have this abundance of open and abundance of clicks, then maybe those are indicators for you that you should be sending more frequently. But don't come out off the bat over sending and then have to scale it back because you're losing subscribers, or have your click rate looks really bad, things like that.
Yeah, I would say, just to double click into what she said, is that going into it knowing what you want to do. So saying if you know every Friday you want to send this out, like set the expectation right up front of what you're going to do. And then you can also choose, you didn't ask this question, but like there's a big question around paywalling content. And so some could be paywalled, some could be free. So really thinking ahead of time what that strategy looks like. Doesn't mean you need to like stick to it. So like start, I would always say like just start, but also have an idea, because you definitely don't want to like do less than what you kind of intended to do from the beginning. Um,
Yeah, so I've been in media for a while, and back even before the internet, and I was working in magazines, and my first one was a weekly magazine, came out every Monday, PC Week. Then I ran a monthly magazine that came out every month, and then a biweekly one. And then television, if you think about television before we had streaming, it was, why was your show every Wednesday at 8? Because we would put people's in their brains, watch Wednesday at 8, The Avengers, and people would do it. They'd think about, I gotta watch my show. And we are creatures of habit of our clocks. So we know about the week. Every Monday, I got to go back to work. Every Saturday, we're partying. So I'm a real big fan of attaching yourself to a time stake. So the time stake for me is Monday morning at 7 a.m. And I know my readers, they tell me, they're like, I wake up every Monday and I read it, or I do it at lunch or whatever. And there are others I know, it's like you could do monthly, but if you do it, I'm the third Thursday of every month, and come up with a stupid reason that you're going to do that. I don't know what it is. But once you come up with that time hook, live it. And you can expand it, although I just did, I do every Monday, and I just did a Thursday special newsletter today because I'm starting to try and figure out how to move my LinkedIn over to Beehive. Long story, but anyway, one of my comments on LinkedIn was, "What's this? I have a Thursday newsletter from you. You've destroyed my world." So when you get a schedule, maybe you shouldn't break it like I just did. Yeah, it's dramatic. He was joking. It's fine, but still, it's like, wait, that was I weirded him out.
Well, speaking of being more personal, we've been talking about that through this panel. Newsletters are a little bit more accessible, and so I can imagine you all get a bunch of comments and feedback from readers. What are the pros and cons, and has there been a situation that was a little bit divisive? Maybe you posted something, the readers didn't, react to it very positively. Any examples?
Well, I love comments. I wish I had more comments. One of the guys that I've been worked with in the past at LinkedIn was like, your stuff is like, you're very, very like in depth. People can be afraid to comment. And I'm like, that's why I started doing some LinkedIn posts that are more like me with Bowser or something. But I think you have to be really up on your audience and their comments and what they talk about. I do these fun cover images. I love it. I play with AI and I come out with images that are in my brain, or maybe not, but AI does a good job. And one of them I did was like Birth of a New Medium, and I had this like sun with these little spaceships running into the sun. But somebody got up and was like, "That's making me uncomfortable. It kind of looks like sperm attacking an egg." And they put this on LinkedIn. I'm like, and then I looked at it, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even notice, but it does look like that. So I immediately changed my cover image, and I put out there, I was like, wow, even if I offend 3 people, I don't want to do it. So make sure you do that. And by the way, if you looked at my Monday newsletter, I noticed this on Tuesday, but nobody said it, so you can't tell anybody. It kind of looks like the pug is humping the creator. So but I saw this, but nobody else has. So if you see it, tell me and I'll change it. But you just have to be very careful. And I'm like, really, I'm like, oh, okay, don't do that. But nobody said it in comments, so hopefully nobody thinks it but me.
I haven't gotten that yet, but I will say that we get a lot of creators, big or small. We've been talking about some big creators Jackie works with, but even like the smaller ones who have very, very intense fans that really feel like this email now is a direct line, which it is, but they will now use this to respond to everything, expect immediate feedback, and get really upset when they're not having that like email exchange after the newsletter is sent. So while, we do tout that this is a direct line, the expectation I think for many creators is I'm going to get this email out and I might get some responses back, but sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. So being able to kind of community manage that, and you, as the content creators that are here, like, that people, even over email, will give feedback that's, which I'm seeing, but like also crazy feedback that they're just not expecting to hear. So anyway, it's going to happen on any platform.
I think in in all likelihood, it's probably because of the size of his audience on social, but our comments on our newsletter and the feedback we get from our newsletter are so positive, and we fostered a community that like is very supportive of him, and the people that have opted into his newsletter are all people that genuinely are supportive and excited and like understand his brand on a more meaningful level, and it's less, you know, the team that he's playing that night's fans coming to his page to like interact. And so from a large creator standpoint, I'd say that that's really been beneficial, and it allows us to interact with that audience in a more thoughtful way, and really kind of close the loop of the social interaction more frequently than we're able to on social. If you get into that habit on social, you often kind of run into picking and choosing, and comment sections are never going to be all positive, especially in the sports world. But in the newsletter, we have been fortunate to date to have it feel much more positive.
You know what? Can I, real quickly, just listening to you, and I think if you do what I said, which is write your newsletter like you're writing to a friend, then that sounds like you'll naturally accrue people who are like open and positive about what you're doing. So maybe that tone leads into that too. I don't know if that's the case, but that made me think of that.
Yeah, I think, you know, you cultivate an audience that's much more bought in on you, because again, they're not passively consuming your content the way they are on social. They're actively opting in to receive something in their inbox, and so hopefully you're providing a content experience that feels more personal, and in turn people are a little bit more thoughtful about how they respond. Like, yes, they may really want our response, or yes, they may like give you really direct feedback, but it's because they feel like they're actually getting it from you and not just sending it out into the ether where they can say anything, um, which I think is kind of a problem that you see on social.
As far as sponsorships, we have folks, you know, sponsoring YouTube on their channels, on their podcasts, on their TikToks. What do you guys think about sponsorships on newsletters? And do you think, you know, we heard from Zay on keeping your integrity. Is it more important to do that on your own newsletters, or is it the same across all channels?
It's a great question, because this is every time I talk to a creator, especially the big creators, they're like, how much money am I going to make on this newsletter? And I'm like, well, we got to take a step back. Like, what are your goals? What is the point of you starting this newsletter? At one point, I did want to also call out big or small creators. Like, it doesn't actually matter. Russell's an example where he has a massive following, and has done very well with his newsletter. But I would say if you're looking at the numbers, it's really hard to correlate and say that somebody with 20 million followers is going to get 20 million subscribers. Like, that's never going to happen. But like, somebody that has, 20,000 on Instagram actually could have like 100,000 subscribers on their newsletter, and that could be like their main medium. And so I just want to get it out there that like big or small creators can be very successful with newsletters, which brings me to the monetization piece, because the expectation for a lot of these big creators that come in with a newsletter is they're getting massive brand deals on YouTube, on Instagram, and they're expecting to see those same things for their newsletter, when really the numbers, like as I just mentioned, might not be the same or correlate. And so that's when it's really important to just take a look and say, you know, what is the goal of this, right? If it's to like have the ownership over your audience and have the emails, like that's super important. Monetization should come next. So thinking about like cultivating that community and then being able to monetize on top of that. And we actually have been using this for the bigger creators as a way to upsell existing partnerships. So let's say there's a brand that works with you for a big chunk of money, and you can get another 20% out of that deal if you say, I'm going to actually include it in my newsletter as well. And it's been a huge value add for a lot of those creators. Similarly, the brands are super excited to work on newsletters because the attribution is so much better than if you're on a YouTube ad read or a podcast or anything like that, because they're literally able to see if you open the newsletter and if you click on their ad. And so buyers, our ad network is like going crazy in terms of advertisers wanting to spend more money with us, because they're able to see the performance and see how successful it's been. Obviously, demographics and all of that is super helpful too. I could talk about this for a while, and I get excited because I think all these creators are actually starting to see this as a monetization channel. And then ads aside, there's also paywalled content. We've talked about that. It's pretty self-explanatory, but just being able to get that exclusive content under paywall and charge your fans and followers. And it's crazy how quickly that can add up. Like $2 a month times X amount, like it really can be significant. So don't be worried to ask people for money because people are used to doing it. It's now part of our whole consumer model for everybody, being able to subscribe. So there might be burnout at some point, but right now we're seeing it like on the way up. So keep asking. Don't hesitate on that.
But, yeah, just having integrity in whoever your brand partners are, I think, is a universal truth, newsletter or otherwise. The people that you bring on to advertise are a reflection of you as well. So make sure that they resonate with your audience, because otherwise your partnership is probably going to be a failure as well. If it's not a brand that actually speaks to the audience that you've grown, then you're not going to convert, and in turn, you're not going to have a return partnership. So that's number one. But number two, I think, like Catherine said, you're able to incorporate into your newsletter how these brands show up in different ways. So really get creative when you're thinking about how you're willing to monetize your newsletters, because there's just so many different ways that you could integrate them. You have so many different sections in a newsletter. There's different ways to gamify it, and they can be incorporated. And so it really comes down to being creative and being able to show brands that you can get people to the place and to the messaging that they're looking for. And newsletters is an actively engaged audience in that department. So that is where the value is. And a lot of people have kind of written editorial off in favor of social at times. And I have seen across the sports media world a big shift back from brands wanting to be in that editorial space.
Yeah,
No,
sorry,
that's
sorry,
fine.
but we work with Jay Shetty's team very closely, and he's a good example of somebody that cares so much about his subscribers that he says no to most ads that come in from us, and they're like the perfect match, and they have a lot of money against them, and he's like, nope, I care so much about my 600,000 subscribers, and I don't want to make them upset. And he chooses, like, proactively chooses not to monetize for a significant amount because he's so protective over them. So monetization isn't like the end goal for all of these creators. So just keeping that in mind too.
No, it's okay. No, I think it's all media is about set and setting. What are you expecting to get out of it, and where are you when you're consuming it? And there are different types of newsletters that bring up different sort of sets and settings. So I'll use an example of one of my favorite newsletters, Recommendo, from Kevin Kelly and a couple other folks. They recommend cool things that you never knew existed. They do Cool Tools podcast as well. I do a lot of clicking on that newsletter because I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. I want to like check into that. But then there are other newsletters. I think even though I have tons of links in my newsletter, it's more of a, these are things you didn't know that you want to learn about, where I've got hot takes or deeper takes on them. And it's a little bit more of a thought leadership thing. And in a thought leadership side, I'm not pulling for links. I'm not pulling for clicks. They're there, but only if you want to go deeper. People read through to get to know what's in there. So I do no affiliate links. I get pummeled with emails from my friends at Beehive all day long. So-and-so wants to do $1 a click and you're going to make 12 bucks. And I'm like, yeah, it's not going to work for me. But what I do is I look for people that want thought leadership, that want to be aligned with the type of content that I do, and I give them 100% share of voice. And I look for people who will do more than one issue. I'm just finishing up a year with Whaler, which was like the best thing ever. And they have a piece in every newsletter. It's in the middle, in between two sections. They get to talk about whatever they want. And I like to think that they've gotten a lot of value about being associated with their brands here, their brands here, their brands here. They get to put that in. And I get paid based on the thought leadership aspect of being associated with what I do. Now, Beehive is doing nothing for me there because I think I have to be at that highest tier level to get that, and I'm not. But that's okay because I can go out and do it myself. But when you think about monetization, don't get caught, and you may not be the one who is the, oh, people are going to click through and it's like I'm going to get paid per click, because that might not be the kind of content that you're doing. So think more about what happens in a more of that sense of thought leadership. And we're not there yet. I don't think the understanding about thought leadership on B2B content like we see on LinkedIn and other places is where it will be in a few years, because it's an emerging market. But if you're true to that thought leadership, don't expect that those clicks are going to work, and don't worry about it. Look for people who want to be assigned to that. I don't know if you have anything you want to say on that, but I'm like, stop this. I mean, I love that you send me the emails. I love it. It's like, we're going to do this. It's like, okay, maybe someday. Oh, here, wait.
I'm good.
Anyway.
For creators just starting out their newsletter, or it could be somebody who just has been posting for a long time, what do you think is the sweet spot in terms of length? Where do you, if it's too long, is there audience drop off? Thoughts?
Okay, I'll really quickly talk about length because mine tends to get longer and longer. And like, if I'm like, oh my God, I have so much to say. Um, there is a thing which I didn't know until I started using Beehive that Gmail actually cuts you off after a certain amount of time and then makes you click through. I got clipped. I got clipped on Monday because I went on too long. I'm like, what's going on here? So don't get clipped. I was wrong. So I don't know how long you need to be to get clipped. I'm sure these guys know. But I think I actually, although I was like, I'm getting too long, I did a survey of my audience. And I'm like, is this too long or too short and just about right? And everybody was like, no, it's just about right. Don't make it any shorter. So ask your audience if you think too, but I obviously don't get clipped.
Coffee.
Yeah, I think this is a really high level question because again, it depends what you're trying to accomplish with your newsletter. At Just Women Sports, we send a daily newsletter, like a daily news newsletter, and that needs to be comprehensive of the daily news. And so the length would vary day to day based on what was happening in the news cycle. And I think it's important to allow for that flexibility. Don't get clipped. That's not good. That would be bad. That was always one of the big things that we looked out for. But with Russell's newsletter, we look for a bit more just consistency and length. So again, users can come. You guys are going to get really annoyed with me saying this, but they can come to expect the consistency each week that we send it. We're around somewhere between 500 and 600 words every time we send. So want it to be long enough that you're completing the thoughts for people and that they're feeling like they're getting information without making it like they're reading, freshman year lit. So yeah.
And the reason we keep saying clipped, I'm sure you guys all have a visual of like the three dots they depressed to keep it extending. And Jackie kind of said this was having deliverability with your newsletter. I learned so much when I joined Beehive. I did not know how complicated email ESP was. Like, it's insanely complicated. And so getting that email into the right inbox for your reader, we all know, right? Like, a lot of times it goes to promotions, a lot of times it goes to spam, and being able to use the right tools to get it to like your audience right where they open their email. Clipping actually can put that into spam, or the wrong title or subject line, etc., can put it into spam. And so there's a lot of like techniques to make sure it lands in the right inbox, and word count, all those things kind of go hand in hand with that.
What's the clipping like? This is like, I need to know this. Like, how many letters or characters or words before you get clipped?
It's not about the word count. It's about the weight of the newsletter. So
Yep.
how many? So links not negative impact, but links contribute to the weight of your newsletter and
Photos.
and so being really thoughtful about the layout of your newsletter in order to make sure.
I clearly need to do more work.
The one other thing, just to piggyback off Catherine, you will get filtered out if you have the wrong things in headlines, if you're getting clipped, things like that. And so make sure you do your research. There are certain words in headlines. Chat GPT can answer this for you, so everyone take it to Chat GPT. But it's not worth it. It's not worth not doing, a little bit of upfront homework before you start sending a newsletter to have things that could really positively or negatively impact the performance of it.
My next question was going to be on AI. Do you guys utilize ChatGPT or AI to help write your newsletters?
I'll start out. For a while I was like 100% written by me, no AI involved. Those smart readers of my newsletter will notice that went away. Because I've shoved a bunch, now that I can shove a bunch of my old newsletters into it and it knows my style, I will, when I write something, a couple paragraphs, I'll be like, hey, my style, don't rewrite for style, but is there like, can you help me out a little bit? And like, try and like cut out a couple words or whatever. It'll rewrite it, and I'll just like every now and then there's like, it did such a good job on that one sentence that I was struggling with, and I'm like, I'm putting that in. So I don't use it to do a lot of the writing, but I use it to do a little bit of an edit, and like, because I don't have an editor, it's just me, and it really does help now. It's terrible 6 months ago or a year ago, but it really helps now with trying to help a little bit of that. So again, I'm not having it write everything, I'm having to do that, except this time, I did the special report today on SEO versus AI generated optimization, and I actually used the research part of ChatGPT to do all the research for me on it. I wrote a cool newsletter around it, but then I took the research and rewrote it a little bit and made that available as a download. So that's kind of cool, and I see myself doing that more and more as well.
Cool. I would say a lot of our creators are using AI, but to your point, you have to make it feel authentic and either learn how you write or make sure you go back and edit whatever they did to make it in your voice. Because it's, as we all know, like we live in San Francisco, we're seeing everything written in ChatGPT these days. It's very obvious if you haven't put your own personal spin on it. So definitely do that. You brought up the newsroom and having editors. We actually work with a ton of journalists that have gone independent lately, and people from CNN, CBS, etc., Wall Street Journal are leaving to go launch, as you guys have all seen, go launch their own independent newsrooms. And that's the biggest thing they ask for is I don't have an editor now. I don't know how to like fact check or anything like this. So we offer like all these different tools to be able to do that. But obviously ChatGPT is a big way for them to do a lot of that, but also maintaining their voice.
By the way, the one thing, y'all know what an M dash is? So an M dash is this like dash that's like 2 characters long with no spaces next to it. ChatGPT puts them in everywhere. And when you see them, and I like writing with dashes because I like it, but I've taken them out because it just makes it look like it's AI. It's like that hot button AI if they're M dash, so I now search for M dash.
As Catherine said, they do offer some services, and so we are utilizing working with some editors that Beehive has helped us with, just because we're actually a pretty small team over at Russell Westbrook Enterprises. But no, we don't use AI to write it. Authenticity and is one of our core pillars, and not that AI is not that, but for Russell, he really likes the words and the things that he's talking about to come from him. We get a lot of voice notes from him, or he writes things out and sends them, and I think that contributes to it feeling like it's genuinely his. Funny story, at Just Women Sports, we tried to use some AI tools to write some things for us, and this was a couple years ago. It couldn't get it right for a variety of reasons. The AI wasn't as far as it is today, but also there simply wasn't enough information. We needed to create the information for the AI tool to pull from, and so we couldn't effectively have it write the article because we needed, or write a section of our newsletter because we needed to create the article in the first place. So I think AI can help solve problems for spaces that already have a lot of coverage, but I think if you're really trying to break into something that you think is lacking coverage, you really have to take the ownership of your writing.
Last 2 questions before I open the floor up for audience questions. Is there any tool or platform that was not mentioned that the audience should know about?
I really like to use Canva for templates and making interesting visual representations in your newsletter. Again, I think it depends on the type of content that your newsletter is filled with, but since we are in the creative space, it's important to be able to represent that both in our writing as well as visually. And so using some of the more innovative design platforms, I think, has been really helpful on our end.
So I use Beehive very specifically and not Substack. And if you want to find out why, come up and ask me later. And the how many? I don't know if you write in Word. Does anybody use Word anymore? I used to write I ran a magazine called Windows Sources, and so I'm like an office junkie. There's a great plugin from AbleBits that actually checks all of my links because I got like 50 or 60 links in there, which is probably bad. That's probably why I got clipped. But it checks all of them because like I just don't want to screw up my links. And then I also use ChatGPT for the cover images, but Google Gemini works. There's a bunch of other ones out there, but I like putting. For a while, I was like, it's just going to be all text, no images, because it's an email from your friend. And then I noticed, like, well, okay, people are putting images in, so now I have fun making images and put them in. That's probably also not good for clipping.
Oh, I'm good.
Like, do Beehive all day long. Beehive is great, by the way. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah,
But-
I'll plug Beehive.
You don't have to.
I moved the Just Women Sports newsletter over to Beehive as well. We had previously been on a more like marketing focused newsletter software. What I like about Beehive is it truly is about allowing content creators to create content, where a lot of other platforms are really more about marketing. And I think that is a challenge. I also think we weren't at Just Women's Sports, and even for Russell, interested in putting up paywalls or having like, you know, paid communities. And so Substack wasn't something, their creator tools were inferior given the fact that we weren't looking for those gated or those like paid gated spaces.
The other thing, wait, one more thing that you like, so if you're a video creator and you're like, oh, I want to turn my video into a newsletter, something to think about. There are other things that'll do this, but I use Descript for video editing because it creates really good captions and I can edit it like it's a word processor. But those, when it captions, great transcripts. Those transcripts are also really cool. You can pull them out and they're pretty good, and then you could pop them into ChatGPT and get it to make a newsletter in your voice if you wanted to. But if you are looking and think like, okay, I make all these videos, now I want to do a newsletter about it, and I want to circumvent some of it, I don't feel like I'm a great writer, grab those transcripts and pop it in, and AI can help you.
Yep, we're
Good.
actually developing a plugin for that right now. So perfect. Because we get a lot of YouTubers that want to be able to get theirs in written format. I think you guys all hit the nail on the head with everything. We don't have, Beehive does not have chat or live video. So if those are things that you're looking for, Substack's doing a great job with those. I will say that we do have a lot of creators that migrate to us when they hit kind of an inflection point on that platform, when they're able to kind of build out their own brand identity, not be part of just another social media platform that just happens to be newsletter based, which is the direction Substack's going in. So we're definitely more independent, building on your own, and having more of your brand identity and customization is big for us.
Okay, I want to end on a fun note. If you could make a newsletter, any topic, what would it be? Fun answers only.
That's too quick.
All right. Okay, so I want to do a newsletter on all the computer products that I've broken by dropping them.
Wow. I want you to do one on Taco Bell. That's all we talked about. Yeah, he lives at the fanciest Taco Bell, and maybe.
That's true. I bathe in chalupas.
That's ridiculous. I have so many group chats going on, so I just want to bring out the content for my group chats, bring it out to the rest of the world. I've actually like done this and started this newsletter. I haven't done anything about it, but basically, if my friends are all buying something, let's all put it in a newsletter and get it out to everybody else. I'm a mom, so let's get more of that stuff circulated about the things that we're all buying and using and love, and more consumerism, I guess. What we all need.
I was going to say something similar to Catherine's. I'd love like a little black book of what's going on in town, so I don't feel like I'm missing out on events or when school things are happening, or like if a reminder that I need to get my kids Easter baskets or whatever the case may be. I like, have routine for that, and I think other people would find value in knowing what's cool and what's going on. And I also, the other thing is I'm like chronically online, so giving moms in town a digest of the trends that their kids are paying attention to.
Awesome.
Let's live that together. You should totally do it together. Good.
Awesome. Okay, let's open it up to any audience questions if you want to just raise your hand. Here, let me.
So I'm trying to integrate between LinkedIn, newsletter, YouTube channel, podcast. Like if I wanted to create like a unified way of approaching, how would I go about, right? Obviously, I'm looking to talk to you, Catherine, but I'd love to hear perspectives from the panelists on that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was just saying, I didn't, I'm not sure I understood the question. Are you looking for
Like,
one platform to do it all?
no, how do I get like results, like when you have your presence across so many platforms, how do you make sure you have unified voice, as well as like how do you know where to spend most time on, right?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's one we get because there's so many different ways to invest your time, and it's why people are getting across all the different platforms. They feel like they need to. I would say in terms of like brand identity is something that Jackie's talked a lot about, is like making sure you're true to your voice on all platforms, but choosing like where do you want to be a little, like if it's a newsletter where you're going to be a little bit different, like choosing one platform where you're offering something a little bit different outside of what you're already, if you're just going to use a newsletter, for instance, just to like put all your, in case you missed it, content and get it out there, like that's okay, but it's not really anything different than what you're doing. It's hard though. It's like you got to evaluate your ROI on all these platforms, and something I talk to people about every day. It's seeing like the goals for each one. It's really important to have like clear goals for each platform and like not lose sight of that, because if you're saying I want to monetize every single and like just do it off of that, that's not going to end well with where you're kind of focusing your time. So sticking true with that, I think, is important. Yeah.
I think it goes back to really understanding what your goals are, and that will tell you where you want to spend the most time. If the goal is just exposure, I suppose it makes sense to be in tons of places at different points of like all at the same time. But if the goal is monetization, or if the goal is to, create like a really tight knit community, like you really have to drill down on what that goal is before you can decide where you want to spend that time. And then your voice should be unified. People should know that they're getting a similar voice across platforms. But the way you write a newsletter should sound different than the way that someone shows up in a TikTok video. And I think it's really important to calibrate towards the audience that you're trying to build on each of those platforms. Having that, you want to have your core voice, but continuing to customize based on where you are. But really, I would take the time to take a step back and say, what are my goals with the audience I'm building? And that will help kind of guide you to the platforms that you want to be on.
Yeah, just to kind of one more example of that, I was talking to like a younger creator, and all she wanted to do was go viral on TikTok. And I was like, then all you have to do is just like do a ton of TikTok content. You should not be talking to me about a newsletter. So just like having goals. I mean, that's one day she'll come back when she goes viral, then she'll need a newsletter. But yeah, there's different goals, like you're saying.
I had a question about how, because I think starting a newsletters can, like, getting the actual people that you want to send the newsletter out to. How do you do you like is the best way to get started to go buy a list of contacts, or create your own content list somehow, or what would be the most efficient way to start doing that? Also, there's Albert's List if you want to. It's a paid for newsletter, but it tells you all the events that are going on in San Francisco if you're interested.
Thank you. I need it for Menlo Park specifically. I know. I know. Yeah. In terms of, listen, I think there are pros and cons of paid lists. I wouldn't necessarily start a newsletter that way. That maybe is a growth tool at some point. But I would not start a newsletter that way. I would start by sending it. You send it within your community. You ask the people within your community already to forward it along. So you're building an authentic audience base off the jump. And I know that sounds intimidating, because if you're just starting in the creator space, it's like, well, how do I go out and get audience? There is no overnight solve that's going to have positive long-term effects. And so I think you really have to be patient, stick to your core, and then really think about what your marketing strategy with a newsletter specifically is going to be, because there's a lot of juice to squeeze from every newsletter you send if you go about marketing it effectively. And that at the end of the day is going to be time better served than just saying, oh, I have 25,000 subscribers because I went out and bought them. You don't really know who they are or why they came in the first place. All of those indicators of why people joined, because you can see over the progression of the lifetime of your newsletter why they came, that will help dictate your content decisions in the future, and in turn create a healthier content strategy, which will lead to more growth.
Real quickly on LinkedIn, if you want to do it on LinkedIn, they have a secret trick. One secret trick. When you have a bunch of followers on LinkedIn and you do an email newsletter, the first issue of your newsletter gets sent to every single one of your followers. So everybody, and that's the only time it ever happens. You can only do it like once a month or something. I think you could have up to 5 newsletters on platform. I don't know why you'd want to do that. But make sure your first newsletter issue is really good, the best it will ever be, and is really clear about about what you're doing and why they should subscribe, because that's the only chance you're going to get in front of all your followers. And at my point now, I do a lot on LinkedIn, but I multicast it over to Beehive. So that's also a thing, but that's just a way to build on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think also make sure that if you do start a newsletter and then you get your first subscribers, you want to set it up so there's like a welcome email that comes to them. So it's saying thank you so much for subscribing. A lot of times I subscribe to emails and I don't see anything in my email. It goes to an abyss and I'll never see anything from that. But if you're very serious about this, you send like an immediate welcome email that says here's what to expect with the newsletter. I know yours is more about the cold start problem of like getting the actual people to subscribe. So just getting it out there, whether you have a social following or not, like tell friends, family, and there are ways to like then build social presence around it to drive more newsletter subscribers.
Best platform to use? Like, is it Constant Contact? Is it one of those?
It's Beehive.
Oh,
You haven't heard this whole time. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah,
the free trial?
It's
actually free for till a certain point. So
there's nothing keeping me from doing.
I'd love to hear what some of your favorite newsletter formats are. I have a favorite, and I stole steal like an artist. I stole that format, and it's top 3 things that I'm jazzed about right now. Top 3 things that I can't stop thinking about, and that's the format of my monthly newsletter every month. I'd be curious to hear, what you guys have seen work. What are some of the formats that you really like to consume, or things that you've just seen work with your clients?
like the list of like the top 3. I love that idea. I would say we always set like a content strategy, right? So like what are the 3 areas they want to talk about? I think consistency, like you said, what you always do, and so what your readers see all the time. Um, Back to corporate Natalie, she always has like the same funny intro where she does like a quick digest of like what's been in the news, and I always know what to expect, and she kind of has her like Gen Z spin on it. Which I like, and being able to kind of start that off that way. And then going into like different subjects, you want to be able to like, catch that attention at the beginning. So I always like to know if I'm going to keep reading, like what's it going to be about. So I like the summary up top. But I also like the brevity it sounds like yours is pretty short and sweet and like to the point. So I also really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think the format I do is basically trying to recap the week and with a couple of things up top where I spend a paragraph or two getting more in depth on it, and then a bunch of like short hits, which I call quibbies. Some of you might get why. Underneath it, but I also like newsletters that have, like you said, a couple of short things, like the recommendo. That's like it's a paragraph. There's 3 different people that write it. They each have a different point of view. They put that in there, and that comes out. And then I also like ones that are because it's somebody that I know and I trust who's going to go really deep into a topic. And if you can get that, like Doug Shapiro or Stratechery or other people like that, those are formats that if you can really go deep on a topic and really help me understand it and give me unique advice, those I think are really cool too. Single topic.
I like formats that allow the consumer to engage. So I really like when there's polls off the back of certain sections because it allows me to feel like I've got a voice in dictating what the future content is going to be. And it allows me to feel synced with the community that is also consuming the newsletter.
Okay, that wraps up our panel. Please give a round of applause to our amazing panelists. Thank you, thank you. One last thing I was thinking about, I thought it was a funny question. I'll ask you, Jim, because I feel like you're a very fun person. What would be a fun, unhinged way to sign off your newsletter? XOXO Jim, or what's a funny?
Well, how about I'm never doing this again. So if you don't subscribe, I'm going away. No, I don't know.
I love that.
I don't know. I mean, like,
Threatening your subscribers. I love that.
it's like the old, remember the National Lampoon cover? Subscribe or look like they're not going to kill the dog, but something like that.
Awesome. Thank you so
Lots
much.
of threats, it sounds
I'm
like.
not going to do that.
Let's get a group picture.
Okay.